today, just going to do a little recap of fact, demonstrable fact. There's things in the Bible that we got to just have in faith, and there's things in heliocentrism that you really got to have faith and just believe, right? But then there's facts in the middle here, and those are the things that I like to work in, and then I'll let the facts tell me which way to go. So the facts are there's layers in the ground in certain parts of the earth. Not everywhere, but we find it in a lot of places. Let's say, I don't know, let's say half. So we find these layers. And they say that each layer represents an era in time. And everything in here were all the things that died during that era and then decomposed and became oil, petrified stone, coal, diamond, or whatever. Excuse me. And then they say it takes millions of years to create each of these layers, because in order to make this layer of mud into coal, you need to have 4 or 5 layers on top of it to give it enough pressure to actually make the change happen. Same, they say in petrified stone, they say that it takes time, it takes billions of years or some shit. See, we've disproven that. There's petrified military tanks we found. We found one of the preachers I listened to, he's got a petrified acorn that a little kid put outside for the winter in a thing of water, and petrified in one winter. The tanks that I was looking at yesterday, they were like World War I, World War II maybe, tanks, and they were, abandoned in this muddy spot. And anyway, they're stone. You could see the top of the tank. The gun was still steel, but all the wheels and the whole body of the tank was solid rock. And we see that all the time now. So we've totally disproven that it takes millions of years for things to petrify. That's just not the case. It just takes the right environmental things. Duh, losing the word there. Anyway, just the right environmental situation, and then everything falls into place and shit can petrify real quick. Same as coal. We make coal in a lab, it's just a matter of pressure. So if in a flood all those layers were dropped there, and then there was a bunch of water still on top of it, all those, everything needed to make those form, all of that stuff form, was there. And that's how you get the layers. See, they tell you these are the layers and this is how they work, but what they don't tell you is that those layers are only found in that order 20% of the time. The other 80% of the time, they're in some other fucking order. So again, that's just not science. If you're wrong 80% of the time, then you're wrong, right? Like, come on. If it was even like a 50-50, you'd be wrong. Like your theory of it all being that, and time being in that order, and then finding it in a different order over here. Well, the times weren't different because of the different continents or whatever, or the different locations on the same continent. So your Jurassic era is at a place over here right? And it's over here, and then it's over here, and all the eras are different, and then it's different over and over and over again. It's not like it's this 20% of the time, and then the other 80% of the time it's this. No, the other it's this 20, and then it's this 10, and this 5, and this 2, and this 3, and that 4, and this 1, and that until you get that, the 100% of what we found, which isn't all of Earth because we haven't dug it all up yet. But of what we've looked at, we've disproven it already, just on that, right? And then where it came from, Buddy just seen the layers and went, that's what they are, and started putting numbers and eras and shoving in different dinosaurs and all kinds of stuff, right? It's as random as Fahrenheit. The guy who made Fahrenheit said, I just wanted a different number system. It doesn't make sense. I just didn't like Celsius. I just wanted something different that I could name after myself or whatever. So I made these ones up. It doesn't make any sense. There's no logic behind it. It's just, this is what I wanted. But powers that be, like our school system, our government, enjoy things like that are totally illogical and irrational, because when they get you to accept something like that in your brain, then they can keep getting you to accept total illogicals, like fallacies in your mind. You can't say that there's only I can't even talk about that. At the time of blowing up my hospital that I was born in here, there were 10 people on Earth who could make a building free fall and implode, that knew how to rig a building to fall just on Earth. So buildings don't just free fall. But I could get you to believe that buildings just free fall if you believe all this other illogical shit. So if you believe that OUGH can make any sound that I tell you it wants to make based on whatever I say, it makes an F sound enough, or it can make all kinds of sounds. It just does anything it wants at any time just because I said so. Right? And English is like that all over the place. Oh, well, why do you do that? Oh, just because I said so. Fucking remember it. I hated that about English. Still hate that about English. It's fucking illogical. I find it quite illogical to deposit one sperm into one digestive system rather than one's reproductive system. Fuck off, Spock. You wouldn't know good blowjob will come and smack you across the face. Yeah. So anyway, I like to work in the realm of logic. Always have. So I hated English because of that kind of stuff. It just, they love to work outside of logic. Anyway, and so does the geologic timescale. Totally illogical. So they can get all these paleontologists and scientists and archaeologists and all this stuff to look at that like it's some kind of holy grail of science. And it's fucking arbitrary and meaningless. There's no evidence for it. It's just because they said so. That's it. It's the only reason. I said so. We need it to be that way. I know I shouldn't point, but I'm impersonating your powers that be, and that's just the way they do it, right? Like when you were in elementary school and you ask questions about stuff like that, that's what you got. You got pointed at. Or well, that's what I got in my generation. Anyway. And then all your other dating methods, carbon dating, radiometric dating, all that stuff, go to the geologic time scale in order to get their They're base numbers. So I've said this a lot, but again, in order you carbon date something and it has this much negative carbon in it, you go to the geologic timescale, find something that has the same amount of negative carbon, and you can then say that they're the same age, and it's this age because of this scale, right? So it's always going back to the scale. So as sound as carbon dating might be, it isn't sound because it goes to there. Now, see, if you were to say that, and we know this, there's a certain amount of negative carbon formed every year. It's only formed -14. It's only formed one way. It's an exponential formula. So I think that's the right word. Anyway, it's going to plateau at some day. So we can then take that mathematical formula, and they can say that, the world will be 2 million years old when we reach our plateau of carbon, and there'll be the same amount destroyed as there is made every year, and it'll just stay the same in our atmosphere forever, and we won't be able to use carbon dating anymore. But the Earth isn't 2 million years old yet. So we can still use carbon dating, and we can use that formula to go back in time, see how far we are on the carbon dating timeline, right? Like if it's this long, sorry, you can't see my hands, if the whole timeline's this long, and we're here mathematically, then the universe is only this old, right? And we can actually say, well, if it had this much negative carbon in it, then it was born this long ago or whatever. But it doesn't actually work out because if you're in the tropics, you're going to have more negative carbon than if you're in the northern hemisphere, because it's formed by protons getting burned by the sun. So if you get more sun and longer days, you're going to have a higher carbon, negative carbon amount, and then there's other factors that exist in that, because we carbon dated a mother fish who was giving birth. The fetus was halfway out of her, and they were fossilized, still alive. So there had to be a catastrophic event that fossilized them. You do realize that, right? Like, the whole fossil record is evidence that something catastrophic happened on Earth to make these fossils, because things don't just fossilize. They rot, or they get eaten, but they don't fossilize. We pick dinosaur bones out of the mud that haven't quite rotted yet, but it's like, basically, it's like a clump of mud. They got to be so careful with it that it doesn't just shatter, right? Because it's turning back to dust. So that's what happens to bones in the ground, not fossilizing. They don't fossilize like we see the fossilized clams in closed position and all that stuff. That whole thing, and especially the locations of those fossils and things like this, that whole thing proves that there was a worldwide flood. That's what it proves. Same as the layers in the earth. All the different layers, trees in the upside down position running through multiple layers, trees running through multiple layers at all, even if they're in the right side up position, if they're going through multiple layers, then that means they're like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 years old in order for a fucking tree to hit 3-4 layers or whatever. That's retarded. But they teach that shit to you guys because, and then they put all your imagination into it as well. So like Star Trek, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff, Superman and all that shit, you wouldn't have that. Dinosaurs, you wouldn't really have that in the same way that we do. So you protect it because it's also your childhood. It's all your childhood, like fantasy and shit. So you think that you need to covet that a bit more than anything else. It's like the person you lost your virginity to or whatever. It's just you got a weakness to that, or because you were a child, and you're only supposed to have one childhood and have one experience like that, one sexual partner in your whole life. We're not designed to have a whole bunch. We're designed to have one. Well, maybe two in a lifetime, but not 20, 30, 40. I know people that are like, gotta be 500, 600. Anyway, so the geologic timescale doesn't make any sense. Carbon dating works, but it doesn't because of what they go back to. Your layers in the earth and all that kind of stuff prove, and your fossils and all that prove the flood, not the other way around. And then that mother fish aged 10,000 years older than the baby, or vice versa. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it stands to reason that she was putting more of her nutrition into the baby, or she was protecting, if negative carbon's bad for us, who knows, I doubt it, she was, nurturing the fetus, so it would have had an exorbitant amount. So you couldn't really count either as being correct, because she would have been malnourished of her carbons in order to give the baby the carbons, or vice versa. She would have been overloaded with carbons, and then how long would it take her system to bleed those carbons out? So anytime you carbon dated a female animal or a baby animal, your numbers would be off based on that, right? But they don't factor any of that shit in. They don't care about that because they're fucking liars. And even most of them aren't. Most of them are fools, just like you. They're just fooled. Just like I was, just like every one of us was. They were attacked as children, then brought up, and then they went to post-secondary education and got this shit drilled into their heads. And then the ones that were like, kind of smart, but not really, become the teachers and think that they're super duper smart because they got all these degrees or whatever. And they get this chip on their shoulder of education, but they don't, all their education's bullshit, and they don't really understand it, and they don't understand logic, so they don't understand their own education, and they can't figure it out, and then they think, well, my little missing piece over here, the biologist has that, but he doesn't. He's got missing pieces too, and then the biologist thinks that the geologist has it, and the fucking geologist doesn't have it, and neither of them have it, so they both think the astrologist has it, and the astrologist doesn't have it, he thinks those two have it. Right? And they all have their missing piece, but they all think the other guy has the piece that fills it in, so it doesn't matter that their piece is missing because the puzzle all goes together because all other information points to that. So it must be that. It's just this one little thing that's a little fucked up. We'll figure it out later. No. Everything's fucked up in all of the sciences, and they just hide all of them. And you think it's just your one thing, but everybody thinks that. So it's a whole bunch of one things. And then when you look at it, it's almost all of the science. But it's hidden in truth because carbon dating does make sense. Radiometric dating does make sense to some point, but not to go back to the geologic timescale because it doesn't make sense. And then they needed glaciers to add up, and I talk about this all the time. They never put something on a glacier and then went back 10 years later, drilled down, and said, oh, okay, this is how many layers are formed in a year, or a decade, or whatever, right? And then averaged that out and started aging glaciers. No. They drilled a hole, seen all these layers, and said, that makes sense to our theory. Let's each call every layer a year. Based on what? Based on it makes sense to our theory. Not based on anything logical. not based on a scientific experiment, just based on we want it to be that. It looks like it could be that if we made it this. So let's just say that it's this. We don't even need to study anymore. Let's just keep drilling, and then we'll keep coming up with bigger numbers. Now, somebody actually did abandon some planes. There was in World War II, 3 planes broke down and were abandoned on a glacier. And it wasn't they got the pilots out of there, and it wasn't cost effective to go back for the planes. They were frozen and whatever. They just left them. They're in the middle of a war, right? In 1990, whatever, 94, I think it was, 50 years later, some guy went and wanted to get these planes because he knew that we all knew they were there. And so these are like, well preserved up there in the fresh snow, frozen in. Everything's going to be in good shape, not going to rust because there's no oxygen getting at it once it's buried in snow, right? And there's no salt in any of that snow. It's all just snow. Anyway, so they had to dig through. They only got one plane because they had to dig through thousands of layers of snow and ice. And this was during our big boom of global warming bullshit. Anyway, dig through all these thousands of layers to get down to this plane, and they finally did get to it, and they were so far down and so deep that they had to take the whole fucking plane apart and disassemble it and send it up in pieces and then reassemble it in his yard so that he could have it on display in his front lawn or whatever. But so that totally, science has to upgrade because this experiment was done proving this. Now you guys have to change what you say, but they don't. They're still teaching kids today that each layer represents a year and all that bullshit, all the way to the university level. People are being taught that, even though we disproved it. And what they said was, oh, well, that one glacier must grow different than all the other glaciers. And then never did a test on any of the other glaciers to prove that. You're a bunch of suckers, is what we are. All of us. We were all a bunch of fucking suckers, and we got suckered in. Whoops. If you're still believing it, you're still a sucker. If you just listen to this video and you still believe them at all, or, well, I don't, go look up everything that I've said. Go to the university textbooks. Look up the geologic timescale. They tell you that it's circular reasoning, and they just age the rocks on the layers and the layers on the rocks, and then you can look up who made it up and how he did, and you can look up how much they find, how many percentage of archaeological digs they find it in the right order, and how much they find it in the wrong order. Like, all this information's there, but nobody puts it all together and says, "Screw you guys. Your theory's garbage." Mostly because an archaeologist will be destroyed if they came out about it. If not killed. There is a beach in Australia that more archaeologists have died on than have been stationed there, geologists. But if you screw with their plan, you're under contract. If you go to a dig, if you're the archaeologist, you go to George Soros and say, "I need money to go dig in there." And he says, "Okay, here's a bunch of money. Here's a contract. You sign it. Bring everything to me, and I'll tell you what you can and can't show the public." And then the archaeologist goes and he does his dig, and he's all happy, and he brings back all his discoveries. And George says, "No, these ones are going to the Smithsonian basement, and these ones can be shown to the people. And if you talk about any of those ones, I'll sue you and you'll be in prison for breaking this contract because you're under contract. You can't talk about it." It doesn't take a bunch of people. It's not everybody's in on it. It just takes a few billionaires that have all the money and all the power and all the resources so nobody else can fund an archaeological dig. except for them. So they have all the fucking power over it, over the whole show. Unless you're just figuring it all out, putting the pieces together at home, like on your own or through a teacher. You never. How are we ever going to move forward? How can science even move forward if we're holding it back in order to appease our theory? When we thought it was religion doing that, you made sure to take the religion out of the schools and replaced it with this stuff. Now, we've disproven all of this stuff. Doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Why don't we get rid of it? What are we going to put religion back in? Well, yeah. All the evidence points to the fucking religious side. Everything points to Noah's flood and that timeline into a young earth. All the science points there. So yeah, why not? And look how good our society was before the 60s. The sexual revolution and all this shit. Like, look where that led us. It didn't take us to someplace good. It took us to someplace horrible. We're a bunch of deviants. People aren't happy. You're all sad. Even if you're pretending that you're happy, you're drinking all the time, or partying, or smoking, or having a glass of wine every night, or whatever. Something. Watching TV constantly, or whatever, in order to avoid the fucking your existence. The real world. You're going and hiding in some fake world because the real world sucks. It sucks because it's not for us. We're not designed to live like this. We're not for this. We're not supposed to have this. We're not supposed to live like this. We're not ants. We're not animals. We're God's children. Put here on this earth for a fucking reason, to grow your soul. There's something inside of you that you feel. It's not string theory that connects us all. It's the Lord's theory that connects us all. Like science will never explain it if they don't honestly look. If you're looking over here and the answer's over there, and you never look over there, like, oh geez, wonder where my tablet is. I'm gonna go look over here. No, I'm never gonna look over there. I wouldn't have set it over there. I'm gonna stay over here. Can't be there. No one would put it there. It's got to be here. Where is it? I can't find it. So you're never going to move forward. As a people, as a civilization, as an individual. You can't move forward. You can't up your level if you think that you're a bug. If you don't know that you're connected to the world and you're a spirit and a soul, then you're never going to up your spirit or your soul into a new and better. You're not going to get new eyes to see better. You're never going to get any of that because you're stuck on something else. You're thinking that you're not that. You're denying truth in order to push a theory, which is religion. I reject religion. Like, look at Catholicism. They manipulated the Bible in order to make the Pope God. They've manipulated it so much that you can pray to the Virgin Mary for some reason, and that you gotta confess to a man and pray with a man in order to get to God. They're middle management. Same thing your government does that's screwing up our whole freaking economy. The more government you have, that's just a bunch of more middlemen. Right? I'm a carpenter. If you hire me to fix your house, right, it's going to be like $25 an hour. If you hire my company to hire me to fix a house, right, it's going to be $40 an hour, $50 an hour. At least $50 an hour right now for a carpenter. That was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So last time I was bidding jobs. So, and that was like before the pandemic, a couple years before the pandemic, actually. So 5 years ago or something. So I'm sure it's probably closer to $60 or $70 an hour now for a carpenter. Whereas you'd only have to pay me $30 if I go to your home. And you cut out the middleman. But more government, more middlemen, less money. For the people that need it the most, right? Now, with the middleman in carpentry, you get insured and whatever. There is some benefit to it, but you're getting the same quality of work, and I cover warranty, the product warranty, because I know how to install the product, so it automatically covers its own warranty for like 3 years on most products or whatever, like flooring and stuff like that. Anyway, it's just crazy. I'm gonna wrap it up because it's 30 minutes. And have a nice day, YouTubers. Keep looking at these calluses on my hands. That's what I'm always looking at, in case you're wondering.